Hail to the king, baby.
I and many others talk about games and how well they hold up, how a game's graphical fidelity can help or hinder its longevity. That's a pretty big reason we receive so many remasters, remakes, and reboots of games every year to keep something alive a little longer. An attempt to elevate it to a standard that fits the modern day so it can be more palatable to those unwilling to play something they consider old. While some games are so dated visually or in their gameplay design that a remake or remaster of some kind is a benefit for old and new fans, many games don't really need it. Less and less games will need it as we hit a point in graphical quality that can only get better in finite ways. Thing is that if we just focus on good art, gameplay, and narrative design, we can continue to make games that are timeless. Games like the classic Doom and Quake, or games like Prey 2017, Red Dead Redemption 2, and even Mario. Because they're all well designed, and while some may be a bit more realistic in their overall design, all the examples I gave have enough stylization to last a lifetime with or without visual makeovers. Doom is 30 years old, but it holds up so well that you'd never really guess its age unless you picked it apart with a fine-tooth comb and intentionally searched for the few flaws in the simulation. Which brings me to Borderlands. Many of you may or may not know that I'm a huge fan of the series, but there's really something special about the original game that started it all. The father of the looter-shooter genre, and one that still holds up well to this day. Borderlands has had a slight lift in resolution, texture quality, and lighting, as well as some frame rate modifications through its remaster, but it still stays true to that classic design. The original doesn't even look that dated by comparison, yet I've heard many call Borderlands an ugly game, or even say that the remastered Game of the Year edition is too dated to be experienced now. Doesn't have the loot variety, so on and so on and so on. Well, that's why I'm here to tell you and anyone else that not only are you wrong, but you're very, very wrong about Borderlands. You're wrong about its graphical fidelity, but you're also wrong about everything else because everyone seems to forget what Borderlands is and where it came from. Everyone gets lost in the micromanaging, build crafting, and post-story progression grind that they forget to actually experience Borderlands for Borderlands and truly understand what that means exactly. So let's dive into what that entails and maybe I can help you understand.
I probably went about this all the wrong way.
Explosions!
Welcome to Firestone. I am CL4PTP. You may call me by my locally designated name, Claptrap.
Borderlands is the father of the looter shooter and the first in a series that still does it best. There's so many small details that make Borderlands stand out from the crowd. There's something about its take on a space western teetering somewhere between Firefly and Mad Max with just the right amount of Southern America and Australia sprinkled in for an added spice. Evil corporations abandoning what is basically a prison mining planet and allowing its prisoners, left behind populace and wildlife to duke it out in a planet-sized gladiatorial arena. Borderlands has something other games do not. It has something special that has always stood out for me and many others. I believe it has something to do with the untapped potential of its sequels, the potential that was laid out in a game filled with dark lines, hard edges, and a dash of macabre humor. Borderlands laid a foundation for something dark and beautiful in all the craziest ways. It grabbed the spaced western idea by the throat and sunk its teeth in, either by design or by accident. Took a simple premise of Halo meets Diablo and ran with it. With that said, before I dig a bit deeper, let's say hey to our local Blondie and allow him to give a rundown on what he believes to be some standout aspects of the game and its many features.
You woke the wrong dog. Ah, yeah!
Borderlands has a visual aesthetic and setting so strong that it's vividly memorable over a decade later. It was the closest thing to a Mad Max setting in gaming at the time, combining the grit and rust of an apocalypse with the lawless braggadocio and gunslinging of a Firefly-inspired western frontier. The gun salad, heavily inspired by Diablo's tiered loot system, felt fresh in a shooter in 2009, and the dynamic stat rolls and stat combos made weapon drops exciting. Borderlands also offered chunky DLC packs to expand the experience. The zombie island of Dr. Ned is a standout, which introduced fresh areas to explore and new personalities to bounce off. The zombie island of Dr. Ned was a generous offering and made a positive impression on the Borderlands community, letting them know that Gearbox was committed to this soon-to-be franchise.
The zombie island of Dr. Ned is a perfect example to kickstart this, because it goes to show Gearbox really knew what made the game interesting. So they doubled down on the dark and gritty, more horrifying aspects to this world, and gave us the first look into one of the gun manufacturing companies that I think many people forget about, and gave us a zombie island, some could even call it a dead island, which helps to highlight the depressing nature of a lost world, especially when you're given many examples of how Jacob's Cove fell to the zombie menace, such as audio logs from Steve.
Steve and I have hunted a lot of things. Skag, crabworms, even went after a moth rat once. These brain suckers are pretty freaky, but they're not so tough. Still, I'm happy my best pal Steve is with me. Yo, Steve! One behind you! Force is teaming with these zombie buggers, but so far so good. Still, we gotta find this doc if we're gonna get our reward.
Yes, that's Steve, from the Borderlands 1 pre-release shorts with Claptrap.
Really? You want me to do it again? Again? Fine. No, I'll do it again. No, seriously, no, right now. We'll do it, no, right now. New take, right now. As you've no doubt seen. I can't believe this Really? Oh my God. Did your mom burn you with cigarettes as a child? What the hell's going on? Seriously, Steve, do something with this guy, please!
And others entailing their demise at the hands of the undead. The crazy Dr. Ned and his experiments, or even the Pumpkin King himself residing on this Halloween-themed hellhole of an island, those small details really highlight that feeling. They really add to the character, to the beauty, and to the despair of this world of Pandora in each of its weird and wacky corners. Borderlands is dark and hard-edged. It wasn't afraid to push the limits and do something crazy, such as the aforementioned idea the developers stated of taking Halo and Diablo, throwing them in a cauldron, and creating the concoction we all know and love. The Halo part is quite light, but I guess you can see it within the shield mechanic like Halo 2, or even the heavy use of vehicles and maybe the semi-open nature to the game akin to Combat Evolved. The Diablo influence is pretty hard to miss from the get-go. Killing enemies and having weapons or ammo shoot out like a fleshy loot pinata in lootable containers all over, or hidden in hidey holes for you to explore and find. The looter premise, and even the opening sequence, throws you for a loop on whether or not the game is taking itself seriously. And sooner rather than later, you find out it most certainly does not take itself seriously. Which, seeing that X3D Realms developers worked at Gearbox at the time, a bit of irreverent humor is to be expected. Borderlands does take a few pages from the Duke 3D book here and there, skipping a few pages not to be too cookie cutter, but it has characters and NPCs making little quips while killing enemies, or even the enemies asking if you're gonna squill before they cook you. Well, I think they're gonna do a lot more swilling than you out in the wasteland, so let's hop into the Black Runner and discuss Pandora. Pandora is full of bandits, and people turned bad by the need to survive, or maybe they were always bad apples. I guess we'll never know. Maybe Pandora was inspired by Greek myth due to both its name and hostile nature, because Pandora was the first woman to exist in Greek mythology, built by Hephaestus under the order of Zeus, and she was responsible for spreading evil into the world, as she is somewhat an equivalent to Eve from the Bible. Pandora translates to all gifts or the all endowed, which would explain why it's filled full of loot and goodies, but also bursting at the seams with blood and viscera. The wacky characters and locations set a tone that's quite hard to nail down at times, while being pretty gritty and horrifying, yet it is also full of character, heart, and an absurd amount of loot. I think Blondie has something to say about that.
Borderlands was chock full of one-liners, funny interactions, and larger-than-life personalities. The gold-capped greedy grin of Marcus, the sultry circus-themed Moxie, the endless bloviation of Claptrap, and the Vault Hunters themselves who exuded so much cool swagger that the planet should have frosted over. All memorable and presented with slick Saturday morning cartoon meets comic book bombast.
The cartoony, hard, dark-lined cell shading they used really set it apart at the time, because not many games were using cell shading, and still to this day, not many games properly use cell shading quite like Borderlands does. The larger-than-life bosses or crazy scenarios really surprised and excited. Something I always enjoyed was Claptrap popping up to tell me there were more missions available at the Firestone bounty board.
Hello! There are new missions available at the New Haven bounty board. Greetings, traveler! New missions are available at Lucky's bounty board.
And just honestly, altogether, I loved the bounty board quests. I really did. And it actually inspired my gaming bounty board podcast. They were a cool way to explore and learn more about the world, and were nicely supplemental in that way, in my opinion. Many people don't notice just how much world building is packed into many side missions, but also how much story is sitting in the mission accept and turn in screen text. Borderlands actually lacks many cinematics aside from bosses and major stuff. There's also not much story told to you outside of audio logs and readable text for missions, like I said before. Borderlands was kinda doing weapon text before Dark Souls in a way, but it was less lore related and more used as hints towards weapon effects based around pop culture references, and the text was mostly used on legendaries and quest related weapons. Borderlands does have some major hub locations, which brings me to Firestone and New Haven, both being the two main locations for characters and quests. Of course you have Lucky's, and some other small little areas, but not many have quite as much character or power to get stuck in your mind as much as these two big, previously mentioned hubs. Firestone is a staple that they've brought back on multiple occasions throughout the series. It's iconic to the heart of Borderlands and the introduction that started it all. It lacks many NPCs outside of Claptrap and Dr. Zed, but it does have a lot of character, especially packed in its little store and Zed's shop, bounty board, and other little secrets hidden around. But especially the huge cemetery you have to pass when entering or exiting Firestone. So either a bunch of bandits came in and killed everybody, which is probably the most likely one, or also pretty likely Zed's been doing one too many experiments. New Haven, on the other hand, is much more lively and filled with many more faces. Dr. Zed moves to this location when you get there, and you finally get to put a body to the face of Marcus and Scooter. There's also a few secrets here and there for the keen-eyed observer. You encounter a couple of Claptrap buddies here, and that's actually a trend of Borderlands 1, specifically before they made the main Claptrap the canon one to survive. You run across many different Claptraps functioning and in need of repair, and once you repair them, they will give you a storage deck upgrade. It's a pretty cool feature exclusive to this game and adds to the lore of nobody liking Claptrap units.
Hey there, stranger. All right, let's go. Good luck.
Pandora isn't just full of weapons, bounties, and blood, but also aliens, a well-known race at this point called Iridians. Iridians add that unknown and mysterious flavor to the world, kind of like the Wayland Corporation's trip to LV-223 in Prometheus. Just like in that film, the Vault Hunters eventually find a hostile alien species, but these aliens are actually trying to protect a vault, which turns out to actually be a prison for the Destroyer, an entirely different kind of alien, which is a lot more animalistic in nature than the more sophisticated Iridians you fight prior. I don't want to spoil too much of that mystery, but it is left quite vague, and that's much better than telling you every little detail, because it's always better to leave room for the imagination, and that's something that Borderlands has always done well. Whether it be their lack of storytelling, the mystery around the Iridians, the planet of Pandora itself, or the many groups and factions of people that you find within. Borderlands is such a fun, weird, and extremely dark adventure that popularized an entire genre of games. I still believe that not only does the series stand out, but the first entry, while being quite dated to modern standards, is still a damn good game. It's hard-edged and filled with dark lines, but man does it have a heart of gold. Let's swap over to Blondie one last time before we close the book on Borderlands for today.
The gunplay, build customization, and co-op were particularly fun to lose yourself in, and I'll always cherish those memories. Is Borderlands still fun to play today? Absolutely. The publishers must have thought so too, because Borderlands received a remaster in 2019, updating the visuals and adding quality of life enhancements. Whether playing co-op or solo, there's an unpretentious simplicity to Borderlands which makes it easy to pick up and play, or slip back into it if you're returning to the dusty planet of Pandora. Give 'em hell, Bloodwing.
I wholeheartedly agree. It's simple, easy to understand, and like slipping on a nice, well-worn slipper for the first time in a while. It's just like riding a bike. Once you learn, you never forget. The co-op is just an added layer of chocolate icing on an already chocolate-filled cake, and my oh my does it feel like your birthday every time you boot it up and grab some loot. So if you want a deeply dark and crazy world to hop into for a bit of fun and mystery, I think you'll be right at home here. Borderlands really stood out to me because of how little it tells you about what's going on, and just how oddly humorous the dark nature of things are, while being surprisingly brutal at times. I mean, something like this rarely happens in later games, and due to the contrast of the dull wasteland and the dark red blood, it really makes you take notice. We definitely get a lot less of TK Baja being hung from his ceiling fan, or absolute freaks like Ninetoes, but they still kept a good bit here and there in later games. I just believe they had way more pushed to the limit in the original. Borderlands is a worthwhile experience now as it was in 2009 or even in 2010 when I grabbed it. It'll be 15 years old this year, half the age of Doom, and if Doom's still playable at this point, why the hell wouldn't Borderlands be playable at this point? And honestly, it blows my mind that it's almost 15 years old. That's just crazy to think about. Keep the Borderlands alive and keep on playing. Keep looting and keep shooting, because there's always more adventures to be had in this universe, and some might even fly you straight to the moon. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Comment Pandora's box down below to let me know you watched to the end, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Well, hello there. Thanks for sticking around. I should have the We Happy Few video up in the near future, and some fun new surprises, so keep your eyes peeled. Thanks to Hey Blondie for lending his voice to this project. Definitely go check him out. I collaborated with Gamer Guy Reviews on Singularity, so please go check that video out, and I'll leave a link down below for not only that video, but also for Hey Blondie's channel. Thank you all so much for the support, and for helping me make it to 600 subscribers and over 200,000 views. It means a lot to hit this milestone, and that everything is on the up and up. Let's see if we can hit 800 to 1,000 by the end of the year. Who knows? Thanks to my Patreon supporters, Osh and my pal High Functioning Medium. You can check out my Patreon down in the description below. I'll see you all later.
Show me some blood. Damn, I'm good.